Most people think the 1% reach financial freedom because they earn more, start earlier, or simply got lucky. But here is the truth almost no one sees. They follow a structural rule so simple, so unglamorous, and so psychologically difficult that 99% of people never use it. A rule built on 4 numbers that quietly shape every financial decision they make: 25, 15, 10, 50. The shock isn't that this rule exists. The shock is that your mind has likely rejected it your entire adult life, without realizing why. Because if you followed it, your relationship with money would look nothing like it does today. Most people fail with money not because they lack information, but because they lack structure. They manage money emotionally, reacting to pressure, reacting to fear, reacting to the feeling of being behind. The 1% do the opposite. They translate every decision into a simple protective structure: 25, 15, 10, 50, that shields them from emotional impulses and keeps their long-term plan alive. But here is the real tension. If the structure is so simple, why do so few people use it? Why do most adults, especially those in their 50s and 60s, carrying responsibilities, repairing past mistakes, trying to protect their families, find this rule both liberating and intimidating at the same time? Let's begin with something that feels like relief. The 1% are not more disciplined. They simply remove discipline from the equation. The first number is 25, the portion of income reserved for long-term growth. Most people wait to invest after everything settles. But everything never settles. Life interrupts, emotions shift, urgency wins. And by the end of the year, almost nothing meaningful was invested. Now imagine this. A man pulls money out of a long-term account because an unexpected expense of around $2,000 appears. The emergency feels enormous. The long-term loss feels invisible. But that single interruption can erase years of progress. The 25 rule exists for one reason: not to force you to invest more, but to prevent you from investing less when life becomes unpredictable. And here comes the real frustration. Your mind resists this number. It feels too rigid, too demanding, too optimistic. But the resistance is emotional, not mathematical. The 25 rule keeps you in the game long enough for compounding to matter, even when your emotions try to pull you out. Most people lose money not in the market, but in their reactions. When a small crisis appears, they abandon the long-term plan. A $2,000 emergency feels like a disaster, but the real disaster is breaking the structure that protects their future. One interruption can cost more than the emergency itself. The 1% don't avoid chaos, they avoid reacting to it. The second number is 15, optionality. This portion exists for one purpose: to make sure opportunities don't slip away. Most people see opportunities they cannot take: a small investment, a partnership, a rental property, a business idea. Not because they lack intelligence, but because every dollar is already committed to survival or comfort. The 15 rule is freedom in disguise. It creates room to move when others freeze. Then comes 10, protection. The portion that accepts reality. Things break, bills appear, repairs demand attention. Life is unpredictable. Most people collapse when an unexpected expense hits, like a $3,000 repair. Not because the repair is catastrophic, but because it destroys their structure, their calm, their plan. The 10 rule prevents this collapse. It keeps the long-term plan untouched. And here comes the inner tension. At first, these numbers feel restrictive, but in practice, they remove stress. They separate emotions from decisions. Opportunities don't reward intelligence. They reward availability. When every dollar is tied to survival, good ideas die on impact. But when you protect optionality, you can move when others can't. You can say yes without breaking everything else. Most people lose more to missed opportunities than to bad decisions. The structure creates your freedom, not the amount you earn. And now comes the final number, 50, lifestyle. It sounds strange. Why would the 1% limit lifestyle to half? Because lifestyle is the silent trap. It expands faster than income. It expands faster than logic. It expands until it destroys stability. Most people accidentally reverse the rule. Lifestyle becomes 60, then 70, then emergencies push deeper, then debt grows, and the long-term plan disappears completely. The 1% flip the equation. Lifestyle comes last, never first. And here is the painful clarity. A man in his 50s or 60s knows that time is heavy. Mistakes echo. Responsibilities accumulate. Starting a new rule feels risky. Changing structure feels intimidating. But the alternative is worse. Without structure, every decision becomes emotional, and emotional decisions cost far more than people expect. Lifestyle grows quietly until it eats everything. When lifestyle expands first, stability disappears. When lifestyle expands last, stability becomes permanent. This is why the 1% never let lifestyle lead the equation. Most financial stress comes from lifestyle, not income. Control lifestyle, and you regain control of your future. So here is the revelation. The 1% do not win because they earn more. They win because they use a structure that protects them from themselves. 25 builds the future. 15 opens doors. 10 protects stability. 50 maintains a lifestyle that doesn't destroy the plan. This is the rule most people never use, not because it's complex, but because it requires moving from emotional money to structural money. Once structure takes over, your results no longer depend on motivation or perfect timing. They depend on repetition. And repetition is the closest thing to a financial superpower most people will ever have. Now comes the decision. Will you continue managing money based on emotion, reacting, correcting, improvising? Or will you adopt a structure that stays strong even when life becomes unpredictable? Because if you change the structure, you change the outcome. If you change the allocation, you change your future. And when you finally stop letting emotions lead, your financial life becomes calm, clear, and predictable. Reflect on this. Then act, not out of urgency, but out of intention. Because structure is the only discipline that never depends on how you feel. This content is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not constitute financial advice. Consult a professional before making financial decisions.